Welcome to Heather Ewing, the CRE Rundown. Today from lovely New York, I have Dr. Pat Boulogne. She is none other than a mindset mastery expert, both for high achieving professionals and also for those athletes. So, personally, as a marathoner, I can't wait to talk to her about this
Wow.
and how we can all up
Mhm.
level our careers and lives. Dr. Pat, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here. And I didn't know that. So that's really quite cool because I've worked marathons, primarily the Boston Marathon, and more than a
Mhm.
few times. So I have a lot of observations about that.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I finally ran it last year. So after
Wow.
several attempts that I hadn't made, I got it in last year, which was tremendous. So
Awesome.
yeah, we'll
Awesome.
have to dive into that.
Hmm.
So we connected through LinkedIn. It's such a great emporium to connect with solid professionals that are really achieving and also up leveling community, people's lives, our nation, and far beyond. So if you could share a little bit more about yourself with our audience.
Well, one of my things is I love to see women in business and I love to see women in business do well because even in this day and time, it's still, I'm sorry, guys, but it's still a man's world. And, and so one of the things, about that is that, I think, back to the JFK quote, which says, a rising tide lifts all boats, but all boats are not seaworthy. So if you take the analogy of boats being like our bodies and our minds, then you've got to find out where the holes are, and you've got to repair that area. And you have to, if you can change it so that it's stronger than it was before, then you're blue water worthy, which is you can go across the Atlantic Ocean or Pacific Ocean, and not just, remain refined to with the area of where your boat's at. Like, for instance, like on the Finger Lakes, or on a smaller river or, that type of thing, or a lake that you would sail on. So it would dictate the size of your life based upon where you have the ability to sail.
That's huge, right?
Hmm.
Because if you think about it, people's visions are extremely limiting. And small vision, small life, big vision, big life. So, what are you noticing as far as when people are coming to you for advice of whether it's personal or career related, of they're at point A, they want to get to point Z. What are the steps for this? What's the process? Because you've taken people on this process, you've been highly effective. What's the map?
The map is different for everybody. I was at a wedding in England one time, and I was very much a novice. I was in chiropractic school, had no clue what I was going to do with my life or what I was getting married or whatever I was doing. And I happened to meet this girl and befriend her. And her father was the CEO of, British Leyland. And so her wedding was really spectacular. And they invited me to come, and I did. And the point of that is that, like when, this gentleman who was there, who was her godfather, was explaining to me how to make a mind map at the rehearsal dinner. And I saw so much potential in that that I kept on doing that anytime I had to do a presentation when I was in school. And so when I take that out and I apply that to my day and time now, one thing I know is that part of my why is to help people create solutions that are simpler, they're safer, and they're quicker. And when you do that, because a lot of people get stuck in the emotion of thinking about it and they don't really take a lot of action on that particular piece. So if you can create that motion or create it so that you can funnel it down, because where people think they want to go is not necessarily really where they want to go. It's like one of my mentors in health and wellness on the chiropractic side always said that, what you got isn't what you got. And
Mhm.
it's just like, and if you think it, and he said, maybe it's something else, and you have to do something first. So, in looking it out, I think you have to really stage it. You have to figure what's the first thing that I really need to do in order to get to where I want to go. And always, my mentor of like 40 years, this guy was like a father figure to me. He was a CEO of a import-export business from Detroit, which they're big, you know, um, partner and collaborator was Ford Motor Company at the time. And that he always said, what he goes, all subjects, excuse me, all when you're doing whatever you're doing, right? He goes, all plans are subject to change. That was his line. And he goes, so never get upset about if something doesn't work out. Just look at what you learned from it and then take those tools and put them in your toolbox. What you didn't learn, or it didn't make sense to you, just throw them away. Don't waste
Right.
time on spilt milk, and then build upon what you already have going. I mean, I had that input since I was 9 years old. And
That's
from,
really special.
right. There's no, I always think that, there's nothing by chance and there's no processes does not require time. So having realistic, goals, and realistic, like, what is it that I really want to do? Then, I help people make better decisions, whether it's travel plans, like their personal life, their, business life, like, what is it that I have to do if I want to go to my next level? And sometimes the conversation is so simple because he always taught me to keep it simple and not make it complicated. And we are so good as human beings at making things complicated, especially if you're trying to figure it out yourself. I am guilty of that myself too. And so I like to see people have that breakthrough and all of a sudden that light go on, like, oh my God, my relationship, when I fixed my business relationship, my home relationship totally changed too. And I didn't expect that as a benefit or of a bonus. But
Right.
I love seeing that. Like I love that look in someone's face when the dimmer switch goes up. And that one little thing has such trickling effect that it's like, a
Mhm.
snowball. It starts out as you know, one little piece of like snow, and then you keep on packing it until you have a larger one, and, depending upon the quality of the snow, depends on the quality of your snowball,
Definitely.
right?
Well, and so a couple of things are jumping out at me. So one, backtracking a little bit, that connection at age 9, right? Like I do
Hmm.
believe there are divine interventions or what I called it as divine discontent.
Yeah.
Years ago when I was in the operations arena, where I just remember driving home one night and I was in my early 20s, but I just felt dead in the eyes. And I
Hmm.
just remembered, I was like, wow, there is a long time until retirement of
Hmm.
find a way, right? And I remember at the time reading an Oprah magazine
Hmm.
of put your goal and backtrack it. And I was in the
Yeah.
manufacturing arena, capacity planning, all this. So I was used to flow maps and all of that. So I was like, okay, endpoint and back it up. But I think that's really neat. And I think each of us really do have inherent gifts, skills, amazing mentors along the way, some short term, some really long, like yours, 40 plus
Hmm.
years. And it's just such a beautiful way to give back. And it really up levels people's lives because, I mean, take a step back, right? How many decisions do we make in a day? I know it's a profound stat, but
Hmm.
I think it's a huge impediment to so many people. And I've gotten better with it over the years, but I mean, talk about getting stuck. It's just so
Well,
that's a huge gift that you're giving people. And two, life is not in silos. And I agree. I mean, I'm just in my early 50s at this point, so there's still a lot to learn, but at least I have a lot in the tool belt. Is that I think the old way of thinking is that life was siloed. Career is here. This is your health. These are your
mhm.
relationships. And it's, as you shared, it's all intermingled.
It is. It's like and sometimes they parallel each other. I mean, you always
Mhm.
seen that, like, a stat on a graph that you have this line going like this, and you have the other line paralleling it below it, or and hopefully, like if it's financial, you want it to be going up, and you want whatever those, interests are to be going along with that also, And I learned a long time ago about reading stats on a chart is that, you want them clearly going up, but when they start to go down, because you have fluctuation, if
Right.
they start to go down, you can go like, okay, that happened. But if it happens again, then you start to have to go like, okay, that's a red flag. What is it that, I'm missing or doing or what's happening in my environment? And many times this comes from within. It's that voice from within that we had from childhood
Mhm.
or from, it's just like when someone says something to you like, are you feeling well? Would you feel great? And you have to think it isn't really about you, it's about them,
Right.
and and there's there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. I mean, and in evaluating, like, how do you feel you're perceived, and how do you want to be perceived, and how are you, like, what are you doing to elevate that in the public eye of who you're working with and who you're working for and who you're trying to attract,
Right.
right?
Well, and I think that also ties in quite nicely with your statement of people coming saying they want this, but as you're using your different
Hmm.
tools and
Right.
resources, right? And when you drill down, this is actually what they want. And I think that's where, I always say we are like sponges. You take
Hmm.
in your
Yeah.
surroundings of what's possible, what's not. And I think too, that's where people come out with wanting to be or have this when the emotion that they really want is what they want, not a certain item or thing or title.
Hmm. For sure. And there's also a way to protect your energy while you're going through that process, because a lot of times, like, I mean, when I had my personal private practice, I could see up to 75 people in a day,
Oh, wow.
and so I had a high volume practice. And people, when I did my surveys in my office, everyone thought, I go, do you feel like you're being heard when you're in the office? They go, oh, absolutely.
Right.
And so I could talk and do an activity at the same time,
Mhm.
and they would be able to have that feeling like, they did it. If they didn't, because I always called patients up when I left to go home and made sure
Right.
that I touched base with every new patient or anybody that came to mind when I was going to leave. I would get a list of their names and phone numbers and just say, hey, I just want to
Right.
touch base with you. How you doing after your
Right.
adjustment today? And it
Right.
was just one of those like really simple things. It took me a half hour, to
Right.
make some of those calls. And some of them were the funniest conversations I ever had. I mean, it's just like maybe I should pull over and not have this conversation
Right.
in the car,
Right. Right.
and so that I can pay attention. But it's really lovely to be able to have that level of communication, and
Hmm.
being able that touch point, because we all think, so I think in this day and time we have a tendency to be a little too empathetic,
Hmm.
and because we've been trained that way, and there's a thing to being like, empathetic,
Right.
and
Right.
so and when you feel like after you meet somebody or been with somebody that you want to go home or you're exhausted, and you want
Yeah.
to go home, and it isn't necessarily that they're toxic, but you left yourself open.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like, how do you protect it? I teach my clients exactly how to do that so that, their peace of mind walks every moment for 24 hours a day with them. And it's not disturbed. So when they go to sleep, they go to sleep. They're not chattering in their head. And when they get up with, hitting the ground, ready to run, with whatever it is that they want to do for that day that they deem as important. And I teach a rule 9 before 9, and which helps people really organize their day and get the first thing off their plate so they can focus on what really matters.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those two people's focus.
Hmm.
Like you said, one, the energy. I think people are giving it all away, or a lot are. Not
Hmm.
everyone, right? But a lot of people are. And I think it's unfortunate because then they don't have time for the things most important to them, their dreams, their goals, because they're, if you want to say, being in service to everyone and everything else. But tying in with all of this, how do you see AI affecting this arena, right? You have a really unique way of helping people flip that switch and understanding their truest desires and what that is, creating the plan. Where do you see AI coming into this? Or do you not?
Well, you know, I don't really, in a way, I could see it coming into it because, when people are looking for bigger or better ideas, like I need to maximize energy, space, and time between like 7 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock. What are the top 5 things I possibly could do? And I like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then, and then it's just like, as long as it doesn't go on and chit chat forever, just like funnel it
Right.
down to a list. I don't need to have an explanation. I need a list. And then if I need an explanation, I'll ask for the explanation. So I've used AI in my own practice for advertising and for content writing and for correcting grammar. So it's what I went to a Catholic school for 12 years, and I still think, like, every once in a while, I'll think that doesn't look right. Is it a semicolon or is it a colon? And is that
Right,
a complete
right.
sentences or is it run on? And so it's an easy tool that takes off that pressure because you want to have your message delivered pristinely. And you want to have it so that it's understandable and people can like let it seep into their consciousness, plant the seed so that, they can, and those kind of pieces of information can elevate. And so I see it in that regard. So, like, and I think that, artificial intelligence, um, if it's expertly given, has some value to it. It's just like how somebody chooses to put that in, like in chiropractic offices, for instance, which I consult with sometimes because I want to show them where they're leaving money on the table and where they're
Right.
not, and like how to make better engagement. I did that with functional medicine doctors back when the functional medicine was this breaking out because the communication matters when you have compliance and you have people who want to say, I want that. I want to have better health and I want to have this, and working with that one individual. So there's information, the way to disseminate that information to people can be helpful with that and helpful with creating specific content that sometimes I first started using I had no clue how to give it a command, but when I give a command now it's just like I know who I'm talking to, why I'm talking to them, and what is the exact single message I want to get out, whether it's 10 words or whether it's 50. And if I can do it in 10 words, I'd rather use the 10-word version. Um, so I see there's a big potential, but I also think that there is, people can get too used to it.
Right.
They rely on it to do their thinking for them, and what AI really gave me when I first started using it was like taking down 2 pages into a half a page.
Right.
And I thought that was cool because I had a friend who was an attorney that taught me that also, but it took him months to teach me that. And,
Right. Right.
and I can take anybody's messaging that they want to do and take it down to, that half page or those 5 sentences as opposed to writing that one piece. It's just a hobby of mine that I
Right.
like that, for me, I like doing. And when I see content, or in copy, I go, that's that's a waste of time. It's in the wrong place for where my eye hits it, and this is a better word, and the generalization of words that you use. I mean, I could go on, there's a whole list. But I think that AI serves a purpose, but I think we have to be mindful about what it is that we want AI to do,
I
and
agree as
then
well.
hire it for that job only, right?
Definitely. And what's kind of interesting too, as you were talking, it wove back into earlier when you were talking about it's really keeping things simple and not
Hmm.
overcrowding it, not adding so much fluff that you lose the message. So
Hmm.
less is more. And I know going back to my earlier years of karate, we always learned keep your basics strong, like the high kicks and all these other things. I wasn't into the flips, but they're pretty, they're fun, they grab attention and wow. But the basics are where the magic is. So that ties in exactly with what you're saying.
Hmm. Right.
It,
Absolutely.
yeah. So when you were also talking about, your 9 before 9 and waking up and just hitting the ground running, what it reminds me too of is Napoleon Hill's, right? Think and Grow Rich, the
Hmm.
1%, the razor's edge. And I think it is in those simplistic, but yet consistency is integral of it, of maintaining those simple practices on a daily basis. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Rituals, it's the funny thing about rituals when you ask people like, what's your health hack? Do you have a habit that you do? And because I did this whole survey for a year and a half, and
Mhm.
with the intention of taking that information and creating it into a book, which I have in the process of consolidating that information, and I got to see if it's still worthy of it. But what I found from people is that there are some people who are so ritualistic that they've taken brushing your teeth into like a whole nother whole dimension, you know. And so the when I ask you, and then always a lot of people say to me they don't have a health hack. I go, do you take a shower in the morning when you get up, or wash your hair or wash your face? That's a ritual. That's a health hack,
Right.
and because we forget to create the simplicity of it.
Hmm.
And so in creating habits, because you take that one thing of brushing your teeth, and now it's become a ritual, whether when you're going to bed, whatever. We'll just use that as an
Right.
example. But the thing is that it becomes, a ritual after like 21 days or after 256 days, which is the average time span for somebody to take something, a habit, and to make it so important to them that they do it every day. Like if you do 200
256
sit-ups,
days
right?
versus,
256 days versus like as
oh,
little as 18 days. But,
right,
it depends upon where your mind's at and how bad you want it.
right,
And so
right.
it's like, or do I want to make this into, I want to make brushing my teeth like a non-existent issue. I just want to do it. So when
Right.
you choose that, then it
Mhm.
becomes a non-existent issue. So that when you get up in the morning and do whatever you do and you brush your teeth, take a shower, brush your teeth, and you get done, you can say like, okay, now what's my next thing to do? And that little voice in you, even if you don't listen to it, says, "What's the next thing we have to do?" And it's just like,
Right.
"Oh, that's could be one of the nine before nine."
Right.
Because I always say, and I'll just, share with your listeners, the nine before nine is doing three things that you need to do for yourself that day to
Mhm.
increase your sustainability, your energy, and your mindset. Then you do three things for your business and you do three things for your family. And it's just like, and if you do that perpetually, and make that important, they can change. It doesn't have to be the same thing,
Right.
and so if you can, when you get that into a rule, then that Napoleon Hill piece comes in because, he talked about even you know, when he hired, when Napoleon Hill was hired by Carnegie to go out and meet all these very successful people and find out what is it that they do, it's just like, I just want to keep that information going so that people can have that accessibility to that information also. Because you might say to me, like, oh, you have a specific thing that you do in the morning, you do yoga. And it's like I hate yoga. I'm never going to do yoga in the morning. It's just like it's
Right.
not for
Right.
me. My educated brain says there's too much flexion in yoga, and I don't want, as I get older, I want to exercise the extensors of my body, not because I want to be able to stand up straight and have great posture. And if you exercise your flexors keep on getting stronger. So in my head, it logically doesn't work. There has to be a balance. But
Yeah.
but for some people, it's just like, so I wouldn't do that. I would do a different exercise
I
and
like to meditate with coffee.
good.
That's one of those. I'm like, it sounds really weird, but it works for me. So my
Uh-huh.
journal and morning meditation. But jumping back into the sports part, because that's an area that I'm very intrigued in too. I actually have the Chicago Marathon coming up on
Woohoo.
the 12th. So we're
Uh-huh.
just over 2 weeks out. What is a mind hack that you'd recommend for me, any other endurance athletes, or any solid business owners? When you're approaching a big, right, a big date, what is one or two things that we can keep focused on to cross that finish line strong?
So I think to cross that finish line strong, something simple that you can do is really have a deep tissue massage, especially focusing on releasing uh, trigger points and adhesions in the calf,
Mhm.
and the sides of the upper legs. Within that muscular area is the tensor fasciolata. Because a lot of times nerve entrapment happens from the low back, and a lot of people have that low back pain when they're running around maybe like the 12th mile, like in Boston, you have that, Heartbreak Hill, and you
Yeah.
have which puts you in a slightly forward tilt for running, which stresses out the low back. So I've always had people tell me that's my hardest point, you know, and also like making sure that you're well trained. So the mental part of that is seeing you going across the finish line with a specific number in mind. And the
Okay.
number and so if you say that, like, I can, I will, and I'm going to have, I'm going to run this race, the best race ever in my entire life. I'm going to have the best time ever in my entire life. I deserve to win. And
Mhm.
if you say that perpetually, I mean, when I went back to school, to acupuncture school, I was already in
Mm.
my 50s, so, and all these young people that were in the class, and I ended up with a 4.0 until one exam at the very end, and like I ended up graduating with a 3.96 and studying
That's
Mandarin
terrific.
too,
That's
and
terrific.
but what I did is, when I went to go take a test, I talked to myself. When I
Hmm.
studied, I talked to myself and I said to myself, where did I get this from? Maybe Napoleon Hill. I said to myself, I'm going to pass this test with flying colors. I'm going to remember everything that I am reading right now. And I'll
Yeah,
be able to,
I like that.
there's no question that they're going to be able to ask me that I don't know the answer to,
Right,
you know, and
right.
I said that and I believe that. Because if you believe
Hmm.
it, it ups it a notch, so you already know that you can complete a marathon, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
That's
take care of the physical part and have someone do some, like trigger release behind, their legs, especially the calf, um, and make sure that your ankles are in good shape, and so that you can, don't have any, like, you're not going to be prone to like, outturn an ankle when you're running. Um, and then just keep yourself at a pace. When you're
yeah.
going uphill, in an uphill thing, just to see yourself, don't look at where you're at, look at where you're going and just
Hmm.
keep focus on where you're going and just say, okay, I can keep my pace for till that telephone pole, and then do it. When you do
Yeah.
that, then your body goes reward, and your endorphin levels go up and then you can even, and then you run like the wind,
I like it.
and then
That'll be the
those,
tagline. Run with the
right?
wind. I like it, Dr.
Like,
Pat.
right. And it's just like, then you have that. I worked with Kenyan runners, and I also like highly going to recommend making sure that you eat the appropriate foods before you run because your body needs foods that create endurance. So it
Right.
needs the protein. Not as many carbs as people believe because proteins take a lot longer to burn off. And when the Kenyan runners ran, they had a really specific diet that they followed going into the race like 5 days before because they wanted to make sure their body had that energy and they were
Right.
digesting the foods that they already have. And
Right.
so, and then they also, we all know that they run as a team. So that team support is huge. So, that's why having an accountability buddy or a running buddy, has always been helpful, and also trying to get that accountability or running buddy who can run faster than you, you know,
Right. I do
and
have
right,
that.
and then it's like, always look where you're going.
Right. Yeah.
Face where you're going. Don't, it's just like the moment you look down, you turn your flexors on, and we want your extensors on because your extensors are where you have the power. That's like when someone's playing basketball and they jump,
Right.
they're using their extensors, they're using their glutes, they're using their hamstrings in order to like push up, and be able to bounce up.
Mhm.
You need, as a runner, those are crucial muscles also.
I like
Right.
it. That's a great tip. You might chuckle at this, but something I've done is I love the color yellow.
Hmm.
I'll run that through me and bananas.
In bananas, because you want the potassium,
Yes,
for
yes.
sure.
And I always look for those on the course. But my final hard-hitting question, I will share my great results from these tips also
Awesome.
in just over 2 weeks. Final question, Dr. Pat. What does living fully mean to you?
Is doing whatever you want to do when you want to do it, and never don't say no to a great invite.
I like it. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Please share with our audience how they can reach out to you and work with you.
One of the best ways to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. On my LinkedIn profile is like where we met, and I meet a lot of really incredible, like how people who have so much energy and they're doing so many different things. I would never have had that opportunity without the platform of LinkedIn. Secondly, I have, my website, which is healthteamnetwork.com. It's a little bit under the process of going to be going into reconstruction. So but there's a lot of different venues about how to reach out and, and ask me questions. There's a microphone on my opening page so that you can tap into that and ask me a question which comes directly to me, and my calendars are always there. So if you got a question, and you want to speak with me personally, there's a way for you to get in touch with me for a short chat. And if you're looking to do like, should I do a detox, or, like how, like I'm trying to find out just the basic stuff, like, where am I at without doing 20 tests, then because go back to basics first, know your foundation, and then you can decide what type of biomarkers and blood work that you really need to do. And I have the accessibility for those tools to be able to share them. And you can find that, on my website also.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me and in sharing that too. Of course, my mind, I have a lot of ideas of future things that we could do together. So not only
Awesome.
personally, but also with my community too. So
Hmm.
thank you so much, Dr. Pat.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here. I love today. This is a really great day.
It's a true
Uh,
joy.
mhm.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.